What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Stack Show. Going to be looking at the Sunday slate for the divisional round of the playoffs. Going to be trying to dig into some of the nuggets for the players in this slate, including a player who scores a touchdown every time he wakes up angry. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching the Stack Show. As I mentioned at the top, got some good nuggets for this slate's show. And we got two games going on today. We got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Buffalo Bills, 45.5-point total there. Kansas City are 2.5-point dogs. And then we got the Detroit Lions versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're playing in Detroit, and it is a 48.5-point total last time I checked, with Tampa Bay as 6.5-point dogs. So got a good couple of games on this slate. The Kansas City-Buffalo rivalry has been going on for a past few years since Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have become prominent quarterbacks, and it continues today. Kansas City has always got the upper hand in the playoffs versus Buffalo, but Buffalo finally is in a spot where they could actually potentially take this game. It's going to be played in Buffalo, and it's basically Kansas City's first playoff game not played in Kansas City. So should be a good game there. And then the Detroit Lions versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Detroit Lions have been writing off the Buccaneers all week, and they've been disrespecting Baker Mayfield all week. I don't think that's a great strategy to use when you're playing a playoff game and your team has won one playoff game since the 90s, but that's what they've been doing. And I think that the Buccaneers are on upset look this week because they have a potential to upset the Detroit Lions, especially with the weapons that they have and the defense that Detroit has. So I'll get into that in a second. Make sure to hit the like button. Looking for 15 likes so I can put out a shorter video for my game script episodes. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. As I mentioned, the game script episodes, I have the Tampa Bay versus Detroit one up already on the site on YouTube, my channel. And Spread a Stare joined me for that one. So make sure to check out that game script episode for more in-depth analysis of that Detroit versus Tampa Bay game. I'm going to have the Kansas City versus Buffalo game up a little bit later. But first, I wanted to get this two-game slate put up so that you guys could check that out and get some thoughts on the two-game slate. Going to be doing the breakdown a little bit different than I normally do. I'm going to go into a optimizer. Going to be using the Roto Grinders optimizer, and we're going to go in there and adjust the projections a little bit to get the guys that I like the most into the player more into the player pool as far as my exposure to them, and then we'll pick through some of those lineups and see which ones that I like best. And I usually do that when I'm building lineups for multiple lineups. If I'm trying to do about 10 lineups or something like that I want to put into a contest, I'll usually build around 150, and then I'll just scroll through and pick out the ones that I like the most. So I'll show you guys how I do that process typically, instead of going through on DraftKings and building the lineups manually today. We'll try the optimizer way and try to get some good lineups that way. So we'll get into that. Before I do that, make sure to sign up for an Underdog account. Use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, and they will match you up to $100 on your first deposit. So make sure to check that out and get that deposit match on top of that. Playoff best ball, I believe we get another round of that in the conference championships. People have been using the rankings, have been pretty happy so far, and it should be hopefully no different next week. I'm hoping that my biggest leans for this week are I was taking a big risk on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I'm heavily exposed to them. So that's a little bit of bias towards my my love for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. And on top of that, I have the Buffalo Bills beating the Chiefs. And I've had that for the past few weeks before the Buffalo Bills even made the playoffs. I was promoting them with a video on the top of all my shows, saying that now was the time to get in on the Bills because they were cheap in these playoff best ball drafts. You could get them in like third and fourth round before you could get Josh Allen. By the end of it, he was basically the second, third overall pick. But if you got in early when I was promoting it, then you got him in the third round or fourth round. He was going really late because there was a lot of uncertainty surrounding the Bills and whether they would make the playoffs. And I took a stand on the Bills, and it ended up paying off. And now they are advancing to the divisional round, facing the Kansas City Chiefs today. So I'll get into that here. All right, so we're going to take a look at some of the, like the players that stand out. When I ran an optimizer just on the projections that I currently have, this is the lineup that came up. I'm going to reset that because we're going to adjust the projections on these players. So we'll get into that here. First game that I'm looking at is going to be the Tampa Bay versus Detroit game. Let's start out how I usually normally start out with a optimizer. I'm going to exclude everybody, and we'll plug in guys as we go through and see which matchups that we like the best. So we're going to go to excluded here, and we're going to get all the players on the slate are in the excluded player pool here. And you can see I've got my rankings here. If you go to all right here, you can see that there's nobody in my player pool. That's because they're all excluded. So we're going to go through here and pick and choose the guys that we like the most. And that'll give you an idea of, how I typically go through this process. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's got probably, one of the best matchups on the slate. You can see on DraftKings, 21 DraftKings points last week, 30 the week before that, 22 versus Dallas, 31 versus Minnesota. He basically gets 100 yards or a touchdown in every game. He did struggle against Chicago in, a few weeks ago. The first game that he played against the Bucs, they played in week 6. You saw he had 33 DraftKings points, 124 yards and a touchdown. Amon-Ra is a guy that we can keep in our player pool, so let's put him in our player pool. I do like Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to be in a good matchup. He did not do much against them in week 6, but I do feel like he's gotten on the same page with Baker since then. You can see his first few weeks. He had a couple big weeks, then a couple slow weeks. But after that Detroit game, is basically he picked up some steam with Baker, and he was pretty consistent up until the last few weeks. Last few weeks, he hasn't done too much. But Mike Evans, I like him today, especially considering how off he has been recently, and that might take some of the attention off of him. Stephon Diggs has a really bad matchup. I'm not going to take him out of my player pool, but I will bump down his projections when I have him in there, because I want to make sure that I'm not, fading him just to fade him. I want to fade him because the optimizer is telling me to fade him. So let's put him in the player pool. Rashee Rice has a good matchup this week. I'm going to keep him in my player pool. The Buffalo Bills are susceptible to the middle of the field. Buffalo Bills also have some injuries that we have to be concerned about in the middle of the field. We're missing Christian Benford, one of the linebackers. We have Terrell Bernard is another linebacker who is doubtful. He has a ankle injury that he's dealing with. He's not ruled out yet, but that's going to be important for that middle of the field where Rashee Rice runs a majority of his routes. And then Teron Johnson looks like he cleared concussion protocol. So I think that Teron Johnson should be in today. Buffalo's also missing Taylor Ramp and Baylor Spector. Those guys and Christian Benford are all ruled out, as well as Gabe Davis on the offense. So, it's going to be tough for Buffalo with these injuries that they're dealing with, especially against a team like Kansas City. Fortunately, though, Kansas City has not been good this year, and that is good for us. The fact that Kansas City only has two weapons really in the passing game to throw to, and that is Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. So I'm going to go ahead and put Rashee Rice in our player pool. Chris Godwin, I like Godwin today. He is in that Detroit matchup. I like receivers against Detroit today. Take a look at the matchup that they have. Detroit's been giving up 24.8 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. Godwin's will run a lot of his routes out wide this year, but he still runs 37% of his routes in the slot. So Godwin is firmly in play today. Detroit is also giving up 15.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, 12.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end, 22.5 DraftKings points a game to quarterbacks, only 18.4 DraftKings points a game to the running backs. So Detroit has been basically a pass funnel defense. They are giving up points in the passing game, but they are doing well against the run. Khalil Shakir, I like Khalil Shakir this week. Note about Khalil Shakir, mentioned by Rich Rebar in his free article, is that the Kansas City defense is giving up about 58% or 51.8% of the receptions against the Chiefs have gone to the slot. And that is where Khalil Shakir has been running 76% of his routes. So I like the guys who are going to have the matchup in the middle against Kansas City. And that's going to be Khalil Shakir. And that's going to be Dalton Kincaid. Stephon Diggs runs 35% of his routes from the middle of the field too. So don't write him off. And that's why we still have him in our player pool on top of, Stephon Diggs obviously has the upside to go off at any time. As far as the Detroit side, Tampa Bay is allowing 27 DraftKings points a game to the slot, 13.8 to wideouts, and 16.1 to tight ends. 22 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, only 18.8 DraftKings points a game to running backs. So another bad matchup for running backs. We'll get Reynolds in there. We'll get Jameson Williams in there. Trey Palmer is a guy that I teased at the top of the show. Trey Palmer is the guy who every time he wakes up angry, he mentions it on Twitter. And when he's woken up angry, he has scored touchdowns on every time that he has tweeted that he has woken up angry. And that goes back to his college days. The last time I saw that tweet, I thought it was funny. That was in the showdown game, I believe, last week. And he wrote the tweet. I ended up going heavier on him in my showdown lineups after I saw that, just to take a stab at it. And he ended up scoring a touchdown last week. So we'll keep rolling with that narrative. He had 2 targets, 1 reception, 56-yard touchdown was the 1 reception that he had. One realistic note with Trey Palmer, he's been giving up more work to David Moore recently. David Moore's been getting a heavier workload at the expense of Trey Palmer, and David Moore ended up scoring a touchdown last week as well. So both those guys had long touchdowns. We can keep both those guys in and maybe just make a rule to only start one of the two. We don't want to start both of them in the same lineup, I don't think. Justin Watson, he's about the only other Chiefs guy that I'd have interest in, apart from the heavy target total that Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice get. Justin Watson is third on that list, so we'll get him in there. I'm not really interested in any of these scrubby guys. Don't like Trent Sherfield. Don't like Andy Isabella. Not really into Deontay Hardy. Valdez-Scantling, the guy's a drop machine. I mean, you can put him in your player pool if you want to have like more exposure to Kansas City. But for me, I think I'm going to get my value from that other game. And I don't really like anyone else on this wide receiver pool. We'll move on to quarterbacks. I do like Josh Allen in the game against Kansas City. Let's check and see what he did last time against Kansas City. They played earlier in the year. He had 21 DraftKings points. He ended up with 29 completions. Or let's see. He ended up with 23 completions, 42 attempts. So only 54% there, but he rushed 10 times for 32 yards and a touchdown. So Josh Allen is always in play. Let's just get him in there. Patrick Mahomes always in play as well. Last game that they played against each other, he ended up getting 14 DraftKings points. So a little bit tougher of a matchup for Patrick Mahomes than Josh Allen, but we'll bump him down in his projection. They got him projected at 21 DraftKings points. I'll bump him down so we don't get overexposed to Patrick Mahomes. The game that I have the most interested in is the Detroit Lions versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm going to put both these guys in. I like them both in the dome. We'll go to running backs next. Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs was not active for the last game that they played against Tampa Bay earlier in the year. That was that week 6 game. Gibbs had, he wasn't active in that game, but we'll put him in our player pool, obviously. Rachaad White in that last game against Detroit. White had 6.8 DraftKings points. As I mentioned, they're not giving up a whole bunch of points to the running back position, but we'll keep White in our player pool just because he gets a whole bunch of usage. We'll just we'll adjust him down as far as projection. Isaiah Pacheco, as far as the points that Buffalo's defense is giving up, they are giving up 20.4 DraftKings points a game to running back. That's a middling matchup. 18.7 to the quarterback. That's a middling matchup. 10.9 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. That's among the best in the league as far as defenses. So the Buffalo defense is really good against wideouts. They're really good against slots too. They're only giving up 18.2 DraftKings points a game to the slot, and they are giving up 13.2 DraftKings points a game to the tight ends. So as far as the passing game, the tight ends have done the best against Buffalo, and the running backs have done the best against Buffalo. On the other side, Kansas City's allowed only 14.9 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. That's among the best in the league against the quarterback. They've been giving up 24.7 DraftKings points a game to running backs, which is bad for a defense. And that is the best matchup on the slate for James Cook. So we'll get James Cook in there. We'll get Pacheco in there as well. And go over the rest of these numbers from Buffalo. Kansas City is giving up only 6.9 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. That is not good for Steph Diggs. They're giving up 20.5 DraftKings points a game to the slot and 9.2 DraftKings points a game to tight ends. Another thing working against Diggs is Warren Sharp. I was listening to a podcast of his. He mentioned that the refs that are going to be refereeing this game tend to not call defensive pass interference, and that gives Snead, one of the most penalized cornerbacks in the league, advantage over Stephon Diggs. And it's not going to help Diggs' cause when he's got a physical cornerback on him that is not getting called for pass interference. So that's another feather in the cap of Khalil Shakir this week. So keep that in mind. We'll go into David Montgomery. He did not have a very good game against Tampa Bay the last time they played earlier in the season. He only had 4.3 DraftKings points. So David Montgomery, we can keep him in our player pool, but we'll project him down. Not interested in Chase Edmonds or any of these other guys, to be honest. Edwards-Helaire, like he could get interesting. Like he is probably the top guy that I would start that's not named Isaiah Pacheco or James Cook. Maybe Latavius Murray, but he hasn't really been getting any work recently. He was a healthy scratch a couple weeks ago, and last week he only had 3.3 DraftKings points. Ty Johnson has gotten more work, but I'm not really interested in Ty Johnson either. For me, it's James Cook or bust. I don't really want to go that low at the running back position and use it as a punt. So I'm going to leave these guys out of the player pool. Already covered this with wideouts. I'm going to get Deontay Hardy just to get a 3K guy in case we need him. Tight ends, Travis Kelce. I mentioned that matchup in the middle of the field versus Buffalo, and the injuries that Buffalo has to their linebackers will be advantageous to Travis Kelce. So we'll put Travis Kelce in our player pool. Sam Laporta. I do like Sam Laporta's matchup. The Bucs are giving up 16.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end. They're giving up 27 to the slot. I think I went through this already. I'll go through it again. That's good for Amon-Ra. 13.8 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. 18.8 to running backs, which is bad. And then 22 to the quarterbacks. So Tampa Bay's defense has been strongest against running backs, and everyone else has been basically eating against them. It's kind of like a mirror image lately of what Detroit's defense is. Detroit's defense has been weak against every position except for the running backs. So it's kind of a mirror situation with Detroit and Tampa Bay, which is why I like that game the most, because I think it could shoot out a little bit. So we get Laporta and Kincaid. We'll get Otten in there. And as far as these other guys, not really interested in the salary savings with any of the other scrubby tight ends. You could go Dawson Knox if you wanted to. I just don't think that the matchup is favorable enough. Like Kansas City's only allowing 9.2 DraftKings points a game to the tight end. They're allowing 20.5 to the slot. That's why I like Shakir. 6.8 to wideouts, as I mentioned. And, the running back is the best matchup there. So Dawson Knox I'm going to leave out of my player pool. I'll go to defenses. I'm just going to put all the defenses in because why not? That leaves us with 29 players in our player pool. Let's go to the flex position first, and we'll adjust up or down some of these projections to get the guys that I like the most, highest in this list. Amon-Ra, I do like Amon-Ra the most. I like Evans the second most. This all looks good so far. Diggs, I want to bump down. I want Kelce over Diggs. I'm going to bump Diggs down to 14 in this game. Diggs has not historically done well versus this matchup. Let's go to Stephon Diggs. History versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to take you to Pro Football Reference. We're going to go look at his game logs, go to career. We're going to go to Kansas City Chiefs here. We know the matchup that is against Ladarius Sneed. I told you guys what Warren Sharp had said about him. If you look in the playoffs last year, he had 6 targets, 3 receptions, 7 yards. 11 targets in 2020, 6 receptions, 77 yards, no touchdown. Last week 6, he had, or week 13 when they faced off against each other, 11 targets, 4 receptions, 24 yards. He had a good game against them in 2022. He had 13 targets, 10 receptions, 148 yards, and 1 touchdown. But prior to that, 5 receptions, 5 targets, 2 receptions, 69 yards, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 46 yards, and a touchdown. So historically, he has not been good against Kansas City. We have a long sample size there. And Kansas City has had Steve Spagnuolo as the defensive coordinator there for a few years now. So it's a few years sample size with this defensive coordinator. He had that one good year, good performance against them in 2020. What was it? 2022. So that was the best year that Diggs has had against them. Now, this is a situation where I'm going to look at the ownership on Stephon Diggs, because we've seen an occasion where he did have success against the Chiefs. If we look at his ownership, though, that's going to dictate to me how much exposure I want to him. And I see him at 31%, which as far as wide receivers makes him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It makes him the 6th highest receiver. He's more highly owned than Khalil Shakir, but not by much. He's higher owned than Mike Evans. Mike Evans is at 30%. You know, I want more exposure to Mike Evans on this slate than Stephon Diggs. So that is why I want to make sure that Mike Evans is significantly higher than Stephon Diggs, because Evans is at 7.2K versus Diggs, which is at 7K for their salary. So you want to have significantly more exposure to Mike Evans than Stephon Diggs. That is why I bump Diggs down to like 14, because I want to make sure that I'm getting more of the lesser owned Mike Evans than Stephon Diggs. Let's see. As far as the rest of these flex positions, let's see who else we want to bump up or down. Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't like him so much in this matchup, but let's take a look and see who we want higher. I want Cook more than any of these other running backs, so I'm going to bump him higher than Pacheco. I'm going to bump him to 18 for this slate. That'll get me more more Cook than Pacheco. He's $100 cheaper than Pacheco as well. As far as the matchup, yeah, I like Rice better than Pacheco. So I'm gonna bump Rice up a little bit more, because he's $400 more expensive, but he's only projected at 0.1 more. So I'm gonna bump up Rice to 17.5. I'm gonna bump Pacheco probably down to 16.4, let's say. And Gibbs, I don't mind having oops, what did I do there? 16.4 here. I'm going to put Gibbs at 16. I'm not a huge fan of Gibbs in this matchup this week. I think it's going to be more of the passing game, but Gibbs is involved in the pass. As far as Travis Kelce, I want to have him probably bumped up ahead of Pacheco. So I'm going to bump him up to 17 this week. Travis Kelce, if we go to the previous matchups against Buffalo, we go back to Pro Football Reference here. We look at his career. versus the Bills. And we see that Travis Kelce in the playoffs last year, in 2021, the last time he played against them in the playoffs, he had 9 targets, 8 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown. In 2020 playoffs, he had 15 targets, 13 receptions, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The regular season this year, 10 targets, 6 receptions, 83 yards, no touchdowns. 2022, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 108 yards, no touchdowns. 2021, 10 targets, 6 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. So we kind of get an idea. He's getting about 10 targets a game when he's facing Buffalo. If we do the math here, that last playoff game, he had 8 plus 9. Let's say he had 18 points in receiving, and then he had an additional 6 points. So he had 24 points in that last game, playoff game against Buffalo. In the 2020 playoff game, he had 13 receptions for 118 yards. So that would have been 14.8. Let's give him 15 points for receiving yards on top of 13 points for receptions. That's 28 points. And then he had 2 touchdowns. So he had about 40 DraftKings points against Buffalo in that 2020 playoff game. Travis Kelce is a lot older now and a lot slower. So he's not going to be as good in this game, probably. Hey, buddy.
Mama said we are going to eat pancakes tomorrow.
All right, bud. Thanks for the heads up. As far as the regular season games, this past game that they had against each other, Travis Kelce ended up with, let's see, that was week 13. He ended up with why can't I see this? Oh, Buffalo, he ended up with 14.3 DraftKings points. So if we go to 2022, he had 108. That would have been 13.8 plus 8 receptions. That would have put him over 20. So that, I mean, just basically, I'm just trying to show you that it would make sense to bump up Travis Kelce in this matchup. And that's why I'm bumping him up from 15.8 to 17. May even want to bump him up even higher than that. I think Patrick Mahomes might lean on him as his guy here. And so I'm going to bump him over Rashee Rice. I want to have Cook as a higher owned guy, though. So I'm going to put Cook at 18.5. We've bumped him up through about 3 points. Mike Evans, I'm keeping him at 18.3. I think that's fair. Amon-Ra is my favorite guy, probably on the slate, so I'm keeping him at 21.5. Rashee Rice, I bumped him up a little bit to 7. You know what? I think 17 was probably a fair projection for him, so I'm going to keep him at 17. I'm going to keep Pacheco a little bit below Rice there. I'm going to keep Gibbs at his current price, current value at 16.4. Rashad White, I want to have Goodwin ahead of all these guys too. So I'm going to put him at 16.2. That should give me a decent amount of exposure to him. Diggs, I had bumped down. Montgomery, I think 13 is probably a good range here with the spread being more favorable to the Lions by almost a touchdown. Against Tampa Bay last time, he had only 4 DraftKings points. So if we got him, okay, so if we look at what Tampa Bay is giving up per game, they're giving up 18.4 DraftKings points, 18.8 DraftKings points a game to running back position. So maybe we want to bump both these guys down. Let's bump down Gibbs to where Montgomery is now, or close to. I'm going to bump him down to 15. I'm going to bump Montgomery down to 10. I'm going to bump Laporta up because he's got that good matchup. And Tampa Bay is giving up 16 DraftKings points a game to tight ends. So I think that Laporta would get most of that. So let's give him 16 because I think he's capable of scoring 16 DraftKings points, and I like Laporta this week. If we go down, Dalton Kincaid, he's the other guy I mentioned that has a good matchup. As far as DraftKings points a game that Kansas City is giving up, they're only giving up 9 DraftKings points a game, but I do like Kincaid in this matchup, so I'm going to bump him up a little bit, and maybe we give him 13. Jameson Williams, I like Jameson Williams this week. Let's give him let's bump him up to 12. And I think that's Shakir. I like Shakir this week too. So let's take a look here and make sure that Shakir is high up on our list. I want to get him above Rachaad White. So I'm going to bump him to 16. So I'm basically just trying to create the order of guys that I like when I do this. Amon-Ra, we got it at the top. We got James Cook after that. We got Mike Evans. We got Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, Godwin, Laporta, Shakir. Let's see. I'm going to bump Pacheco down a little bit because I like these Detroit guys more than I like the Kansas City game. I think the Detroit game is going to be more of a shootout. So that's why I want to make sure that my Detroit Tampa guys are higher up on this on these projections. Jahmyr Gibbs, I have him down. I'm not really high on him compared to these other guys, but I'm going to swap these guys out. I'm going to put him at 15.6. I'm going to put Rachaad White at 15 because I like Gibbs more than I like White. Pacheco is down to 15. I like him better than both these guys. So I'm going to put him at 15. I'm going to put him at, let's see. He's 16.4K. I'm going to bump him to 16 too because it's not going to affect us too much if I have him at 16 and he's the same as Laporta and Shakir. All right, so Gibbs is down, White is down, Diggs is down, Kincaid is up a little bit, Jameson Williams is up a little bit. So let's see what this does for us as far as our exposures. I'm going to go ahead and build 150 lineups. First, let's do an optimizer. We got to do the quarterbacks first. As far as the quarterbacks, Josh Allen at 24. That might be a little bit much for me. I'm going to bump him down to 22. I'm going to bump Mahomes way down to about 18. I'm going to keep Baker at 18.9, and I'm going to keep Goff at where he's at. Yeah, I'm just going to keep those guys. I'm going to see what that does for an optimizer. All right, so optimizer, as far as the optimal lineup, that would have Baker Mayfield, Pacheco, James Cook, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and Khalil Shakir. I don't have enough exposure to those wideouts on the Tampa side, so I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. I'm going to bump up Evans to 20. I'm going to bump up, let's see, it's got Rashee Rice too high for me. Let's see. I'm going to keep him as is. It's got Khalil Shakir in there, which I like. It's got Jameson Williams in there, which I like. It's got Cook in there, which I like. Pacheco, I'm going to bump him down a little bit. Maybe bump him down to 15.5 and see what that does. This way, too, like even if you bump down a guy like Pacheco and the optimizer is still trying to get him in, that's telling you that he's at a good price point. Josh Allen, this has the new optimizer has Josh Allen to Khalil Shakir and James Cook. I like that combo of players. They got Pacheco in there still. I like that considering the matchups for the running backs in that Detroit game. It gave me Mike Evans, which I like. It gave me Sam Laporta, and it gave me Travis Kelce. So one thing that I might do on this is bump up Amon-Ra a little bit more because I don't want to leave him out. So let's bump him up to 23. Let's try that again. I got Amon-Ra and Evans in this one. Back to Baker Mayfield as my quarterback. We got the running backs in the other game, which I like. I got Baker to Evans. We got Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra running it back. And then we got Travis Kelce in the tight end position, and we got Khalil Shakir in the flex. We got the Bucs D, which I don't know how much of a fan I am of that, but I think I would want Baker double stacked. So let's go into these wide receivers. Let's bump up Trey Palmer. Let's say Palmer gets a touchdown. I'm going to bump him up to 9. Let's see what that does. All right, so right now I'm building 150 lineups, so we can just kind of pick and choose through those, see which ones we like the best. So give this a second. All right, so we got Baker Mayfield, Isaiah Pacheco, and James Cook. We got Williams and Amon-Ra running it back. We got Mike Evans, Travis Kelce still, and Khalil Shakir. I might want to try to get Laporta up a little bit. Although I don't know if I want to have Williams, Amon-Ra, and Laporta, especially with only one Tampa Bay Buck. But let's scroll down here and see what other lineups we got. This one has Rashee Rice. This one has probably a little too much exposure to this Buffalo game. Apparently, I got to bump these guys down. So let's take another look here. Rashee Rice, I'm going to go ahead and bump him down to 15. I'm going to bump down. I like Khalil Shakir, but let's bump him down to 14. Gibbs, I'm going to keep down. Pacheco, I want to keep him. Rashad White is a good price there. Stephon Diggs, I like him being down there. Kincaid, I'm going to bump him to 15. Jameson Williams, I'm going to bump him to, I don't need to bump him. He's getting in there anyways. Trey Palmer, we got at 9.6. Travis Kelce's the other guy I want to bump down. I'm going to bump him down to, let's bump him down to 17. All right, let's see what that does for our optimizer first. This got me at Jared Goff to Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Isaiah Pacheco and Cook as my running backs. It's got Evans as a run back. It's got Kincaid in there and Shakir in there. I like both those guys. And the Lions D. So, I mean, that's an interesting build. Let's try and build 150. It's getting me what I like. I want to get more exposure to this Tampa Bay Lions game. And this is the order that I'm liking players the most at. Like that's getting closer to how I envision it. I'm going to bump Kelsey down to his 15.8 projection though. I can probably, since I'm doing that, I can bump some of these other guys down a little bit. I'm going to keep Laporta as is. I'm going to keep Godwin as is. Pacheco, I think I can bump him back up to his projection, 16.9. Kincaid, I want to keep him up. Rashad White, I'm going to keep him down. Rashid Rice, I'm going to keep him down there too. I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to support two guys today too high against that Buffalo defense. So that's why I want less exposure to that passing game. I like Shakir. And I like Kincaid. Okay, so let's try that. I'll try that optimizer. Gives me Jameson Williams. Let's bump up Chris Godwin a little bit more. Let's put him at 17.2. Let's try that and see what that does. All right, so let's build 150 like that, and we can pick and choose some of these lineups now that I have more heavier exposure to that Lions Tampa Bay game, and then I'll go in and adjust the defense projections too. All right, so we got Jared Goff, Pacheco, and Cook. I got Goff to Williams and Amon-Ra. I got Evans as a run back. Got Kincaid and Shakir exposure. Those guys are both good. And I got the Lions D. So that is one that I like. So I'll put that in my favorites. Other one, I got Baker Mayfield to Mike Evans. We got Dalton Kincaid still and Khalil Shakir. Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. If I want Baker as my quarterback, though, I got to put him with two of his receivers. So I'm going to add a group here. I'm going to go to Tampa Bay pass game. Save that. I want to have at least two of these guys with Baker Mayfield as my quarterback. Let's go Trey Palmer, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. And David Moore. I think I got him too. Okay, so I'm going to have at least two of these guys. I'm going to want to set another rule, though. Tampa Bay scrubs, because I don't want to have more than one of Trey Palmer and David Moore in my lineups. So I'm only want to have one of these guys. We can go to our player pool, look at the defense real quick. I want to bump the Lions down. I don't like them being the highest projected defense. I'm going to put them down to 5. That'll give me more exposure to the Bills and the Chiefs. Let's try that in the optimizer. Okay, so I've got a couple build rules in there this time around. It'll probably not give me as much Baker as I want, so I'm going to bump him up to 19.5. Let's bump him up above Jared Goff here. All right, let's see what that does. We've got Josh Allen bumped down in his projection. Jared Goff, I'm keeping him at his current projection. I bumped up Baker a little bit. I bumped Mahomes down because Mahomes is, he just has not been good, and we need to see what his Rashid Rice is able to do in a high-pressure game like this. I got Jared Goff to Pacheco and Cook, Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra, Mike Evans. We got Kincaid and Shakir and the Bills D. I'm starting to like that, how these are looking more. We got Josh Allen to James Cook, Shakir, and Kincaid. We got Isaiah Pacheco as the run back. We got Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta in there. I don't like not having Evans in. I want to have more exposure to Evans than it's given me. So let's go back to the player pool. Let's put Evans. He's pricey. This is why it's not forcing him in. But let's make sure that we're getting Evans exposure here. I'm going to bump him up to 23. I'm going to bump up Amon-Ra to let's bump him up to 25. These guys are capable of putting up those scores, and we want to force Evans into more of these lineups. So just give it a second here to process, and we'll see what it does. All right, so it gave us a Patrick Mahomes lineup. Let's see, Jared Goff. Still not getting any Baker lineups here. Here we go. Baker Mayfield. We got Pacheco and Cook. We got him throwing to Trey Palmer and Mike Evans, running it back with Amon-Ra St. Brown. We got Kincaid and we got Shakir in there too, and the Bills D. So let me go and look one more time. I want to see Shakir versus Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is 3,600. Shakir's, let's bump up Williams to 13. Let's try this again. Let's see if he gives us a little bit more Jameson Williams than it was in some of those early builds. I do like Shakir a lot, though, this week, so I'm not going to – I don't want to phase him out of my builds. So we got Goff, Pacheco, and Cook. We got Goff to Williams, Amon-Ra running it back with Evans. Kincaid and Shakir are all in there. That's a decent one. Bills D, that's the one that we saw last time. The Mahomes lineup that is trying to jam in, even though I projected Mahomes down, it's still trying to jam him in. It's got Mahomes to Pacheco and no receivers. That would be a rule that I'd have to change. Like Mahomes has to have at least one of his receivers for me. So let's build another group here. We're going to do Kansas City wide receivers, or we'll just put Kansas City receivers. And I want to have at least one of Kelsey and Rice when I am using Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. So that will be a way that, they'll force in one of those receivers when they use Mahomes at the quarterback position. If your projections that you update are not getting these types of lineups that you want in there, like not giving you wide receivers with your quarterbacks and stuff, then you got to kind of set some rules to help expedite that. We got Goff, Gibbs, Jameson Williams, and Amon-Ra running it back with Evans. We got Kincaid, Shakir, and the Bills D on that one. Let's see. Let's see if we can find some Baker Mayfield ones. I'm going to see what my exposure is to Baker. I got 49% Goff in that. I got 32% Baker and 19% Josh Allen. I want to have a little bit more Baker than Goff. Although I don't hate having this much Goff exposure. Let's go to running back. James Cook is my highest owned. I like that. Pacheco is second highest owned. I like that too. Gibbs, I only have 26% exposure to him. 19% to White and 1% to David Montgomery. So I don't mind that. My wide receivers, I got 85% exposure to Mike Evans, which I want. 74% to Shakir. He's my favorite cheap guy. 74% to Amon-Ra. 67% Jameis Williams. I got 31% to Trey Palmer, which is, my crapshoot basically. Godwin, I have 27%. So I want a little bit more Godwin than Trey Palmer, because Trey Palmer is just like he's taking a stab at something. So let's try to bump up Godwin just a little bit more. Let's get him to 18. See what that does. We'll see if that bumps up my ownership exposure to him. This is the way that I usually build my lineups when I'm doing mass multi-entering, which I was doing last year. I currently don't have a income, so I am way down on my lineup building, and I've been doing mainly hand built recently, with sometimes going this way and picking and choosing my lineups. Let's see what that did to our wide receiver exposure. That bumped up Godwin to 40%, bumped down Trey Palmer to 28%, which I'm more comfortable with. Josh Reynolds, I don't like him or hate him, but 8% exposure, I don't mind. That gives me Mike Evans as my highest owned guy. Khalil Shakir, I got him at 73%. Amon-Ra is down to 67%. Let's fix that. Going to bump him to 26. It's just basically, you just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking until you start getting the percentages that you like. If you do it this way, a lot of people will just go with what the projections are telling them, which is, completely fine. But if you want to have a little bit more control over what it's given you based on your own biases, then this is a way to do it. So this one's giving me 51% Goff, 33% Mayfield, 16% Josh Allen. For wideouts, it's giving me, bumping up Amon-Ra bumped down Godwin a little bit. So let's see. Let's bump down Trey Palmer just a little bit. Let's give him 8.6. Let's use that Trey Palmer angry thing, maybe more as a anytime touchdown prop as opposed to jamming him into more lineups than Chris Godwin today. But if this one still has him at that 30%, given that I've bumped him down to 8.6, then that will tell me that maybe he's got to keep in there. Keep getting Baker Mayfield going down. Let's bump up Baker to let's bump him up to 21. Let's try that. That's probably a little high for Baker Mayfield, but I want to have more Mayfield than Goff today. I got a feeling that Mayfield is going to have a big game. I just don't like that the Lions have been poking the bear with him. You can see with Mayfield this season, 30 points against Philly last week against a weak pass defense. Detroit is also a weak pass defense. He had 21 versus New Orleans. He had 20 versus Jacksonville, 33 versus Green Bay, 20 versus Atlanta, and 21 versus Buffalo. On top of that, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Lions are giving up 22.5 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, which is important when you're bumping these up and down. I'm going to delete some of these older builds. You can't have too many in there or it starts to tell you to delete them anyways. So let's see what that did for a quarterback. That gives us 51% Mayfield, which is good, 39% Goff, and 9% Josh Allen. Given the ownership projections on these guys, let's see, Josh Allen's ownership versus these other guys. Allen's going to be the highest owned guy on the slate. Obviously a good reason for that. Followed by Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, and Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes at that discount is interesting too. So maybe we bump Mahomes up a little bit because you can't write off Mahomes. We got Goff. This is still the most popular or the highest projected one. Let's get into some of these Baker ones though. All right, so if we're looking at these Baker Mayfield lineups, we got Mayfield to Pacheco and Cook. We got Trey Palmer and Mike Evans stacked, running it back with Amon-Ra, Dalton Kincaid, and Khalil Shakir. What I might do on this one would be swap out Shakir for Jameson Williams, which you can do like that. You just press the plus button there. I'm going to keep this one as is and put that in my player pool or my lineup pool. Baker Mayfield to Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook. We got Palmer and Evans stacked with Mayfield, running it back with Jameson, Laporta, and Amon-Ra. This one only has running back exposure to that second game, which, I don't hate. And it's also got the Bills D. So let's plug that one in. Baker, Pacheco, and Cook. Palmer and Evans. We got Jameson Williams. We got Travis Kelce in the tight end in that one. And Amon-Ra as the flex. I like that one as well. Let's see if we can get a few Godwins in too. But first, let's go Baker, Pacheco, and Cook. We got Trey Palmer to Amon-Ra. And we got Evans, and we got Laporta and Khalil Shakir. I like that one as well. So a lot of good lineups that is spitting out that go more in line with what I'm thinking for today's slate. We got Baker, Pacheco, and Cook. We got Shakir in there. We got Godwin to Evans. And we got Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid. So double tight end on that one. I do like all these players. So I'm going to go ahead and like that one too. This one we got Baker to Pacheco. We got Cook in there as well. We got Shakir, Godwin, and Evans, Dalton Kincaid, and Travis Kelce. I like that one. See, we're getting some really cool lineups now with all those rules and those projection updates that I did there. So you basically can manipulate it so that you're getting what you want. You probably, if you're more comfortable with the projections that your resource is giving you, you probably don't want to tweak it as much as I do. But that's just what I do when I'm on a slate like this, and I know that it's going to be tough to get in the guys that I like because the projections typically take, like an average of, what the player generally scores and, kind of mixes it in with the average of maybe what the other defense is allowing. And it figures it out from there. But if you have personal biases that you want to kind of put in there, like if you think that the Bucs are going to do better than they're projected to do, then that's where you want to kind of tweak it and try to get your guys higher in that hierarchy of players that they're choosing for you. This one has Palmer and Evans, Jameson Williams, Dalton Kincaid, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like that one too. So let's do that for our Baker Mayfield lineups. Let's say that we want to do 20. If we want to enter 20 lineups into like that $3 contest or something like that. So right now I got 50% about Baker Mayfield. Let's get some Josh Allen's in there. This one's got Josh Allen to Pacheco and Cook. We got Shakir and Kincaid in there. I like that stack. We got Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra, and Sam Laporta on the other side. I don't have any Tampa Bay representation there. Let's see. We got Josh Allen to Cook, Kincaid, and Shakir. Not running it. We're running it back with Pacheco. And then we got Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra for Detroit and Godwin running it back. Don't know if I'd go with the Bucs D there, though. Here's one. We got Josh Allen running it back with Pacheco. We got Cook We got Williams and Amon-Ra running it back with Evans and Cade Otton. And then we got Shakir in there as well. So Allen to Cook and Shakir. I don't hate that. Let's put that one. Let's go ahead and put that one in. Allen to Pacheco and Cook, Jameson, Williams, Evans, and Godwin. If I had Evans and Godwin in there, though, I want to have Baker as my quarterback. Let's see if we can get another good one where I see I got to see a Tampa Bay guy. I want to get a Tampa Bay representation in there. This one looks interesting. We got Amon-Ra. We got Josh Allen to Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Jameson, Amon-Ra. We got Evans and Otton in there, but we don't have any Kansas City run back. Let's see. I'm looking for Mike Evans one that has a Kansas City run back. This one. Here we go. Josh Allen to Pacheco and Cook. We got Jameson Williams. We got Khalil Shakir. And James Cook are the guys that are stacked with Josh Allen. I like that. I like running it back with Pacheco and Kelsey. I like Sam Laporta, Mike Evans, represented in that other game along with Jameson Williams. So I like this lineup. And on this one, we got Allen to Pacheco and Cook, Jameson Williams, Evans and Godwin in this one, Kincaid. So we got Cook and Kincaid and Shakir. Chiefs D is the run back in that one, as well as the Pacheco. So yeah, let's put that one in. I know you don't want to run the defense though. Let's go with let's see if we can get a different defense in there. I'm going to go ahead and put the let's see what one would make the most sense. I've got pretty heavy exposure to the Bucs in this one, but we got no Baker Mayfield. Okay, so maybe we put the Detroit D. So maybe Mayfield is catch-up mode, and the Lions D is the reason why they are in that situation. So let's do that and then add that one in. I know I said earlier the Baker Mayfield is what I prefer with Evans and Godwin there. Let's go and see some of these Godwin lineups. I'm going to get some more Godwin, Evans stacked with Baker. So let's go look at these Godwin lineups. Here's one right off the bat. Only running it back with Gibbs, though. This one's got Cook. Okay, so here's I want to get at least a decent line in with it, with Baker as the quarterback. I'm trying to get one with Amon-Ra in there along with here's an interesting one. We got Baker to Pacheco and Cook as the running backs. We got Baker to Evans and Godwin, running it back with Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta. And then we got Khalil Shakir in there and the Bills D. I like that one. So there's one. Baker, we got Gibbs, Jameson, and Laporta, running it back with Evans and Godwin. We got Cook in there. Got no KC in this one, but, I'm not, I don't mind not having KC in there. That's probably the team that I don't mind having no guys in there because they can be unpredictable. It could be spread out, like super spread out. The Chiefs could still win that or keep it close and not have guys in there because they're spreading it out too much. And Patrick Mahomes is scoring all the points, but maybe he doesn't score enough to get over Baker Mayfield. Don't like that one. Here's one. It's got no Amon-Ra, but we got Baker, Isaiah Pacheco, and James Cook. We got Jameson Williams. We got Evans and Godwin. And then we got Kelsey. Shakir and the Bills D. So that's enough for that. Let's go and build a few more with Patrick Mahomes. We're going to put Patrick Mahomes now. We're going to bump him up to back up to his projection of 21. We'll bump Mayfield back down to 18.9. Keep Josh Allen as he is. And let's try this out. Let's see how many Patrick Mahomes lineups it gets us. Actually, you know what? I got to adjust his weapons too. So let's go to the flex. Let's bump Evans back down to 22. Let's bump Amon-Ra to 21.5. Bump Evans down to 21. We'll keep Cook as is. Godwin, we can bump back down to about 16. Laporta. Kelsey, let's bump him up to 17. Rashid Rice, let's bump him up to 17. Let's see what this does for us. Let's see how much of the Chiefs stacks it's going to give us. Got to wait for it to process a minute here, and you can do this. Kind of tweak as you're doing this to get different combinations that you want, and you can just you can label it up here like Chiefs. So let's go into our positions. Let's look at quarterbacks. Let's get all our Mahomes lineup, see what we got here. We got Mahomes, Pacheco, Rashid Rice, Travis Kelce. We got Evans in there. We got Cook and Shakir as our run backs. So if you wanted to stack this game, this is stacking all those primary weapons. I think if I have Pacheco in there, I only want to have one other pass catcher. If I'm doing Mahomes to two pass catchers, I don't want Pacheco in there. So this one I don't mind with Mahomes to Pacheco, Cook, Jameson Williams, Khalil Shakir, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta. We don't have any Tampa Bay in there. We got Mahomes to Pacheco and Rashid Rice. We got James Cook, Jameson Williams, Mike Evans, Sam Laporta. So this one's pretty good, actually. I like this one. Let's put that one in there. Mahomes to Pacheco and Kelsey. We got Evans and Godwin, Jameson Williams, James Cook, Khalil Shakir. Let's try bumping down Pacheco just a little bit, because if I want to go heavier on Mahomes at the quarterback position, then I want to have less exposure to Pacheco. I'm not saying that they can't score together, have decent DraftKings points together, but if you're going heavier on Mahomes, you want to have more of his passing weapons as opposed to his running back. So let's try this out and see what it gives us. Okay. This will be my last one because I want to get this show posted. We got Mahomes to Rice and Kelsey. We got Jahmyr Gibbs and James Cook. Jameson Williams. We got Evans in there, and we got Shakir, as I said. But we got the Bills D. I'd swap out the Bills D in this one. Maybe go for the Bucs D instead. That's a lineup that I kind of like there. We got Mahomes to Gibbs and Cook. Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra, Laporta. A little too much Lions in there. We got Mahomes. We got White and Cook, Jameson Williams and Evans. So we got enough representation on Mahomes in the passing game, and we're running it back with Cook and Shakir, which I like. Again, I would swap out the Bills D there for probably the Bucs, I guess, if I can't afford the Lions. This one we got Mahomes, Pacheco. So it's giving us like all those guys again. But this should give you guys an idea basically of how you can mess around and manipulate optimizers. Right now I have 19 lineups. I would probably put a lot more Jared Goff lineups in there too. I just don't have time to go through it. It's a morning long process when you're doing this stuff. You tweaking, trying to get the percentages that you like, and all that kind of stuff. And then try not to get too far away from the projections that you like in the beginning, anyways. But sometimes, as you can see with me, there's a lot of adjustments on these projections. I try to keep some guys as is. Like the base that you want to start with is what the projections are giving you, and then you just kind of tweak as you go along and make sure that you're getting more exposure to the guys that you like, and the optimizer is working for you instead of against you. So that's a little bit of a look at what I do when I do an optimizer, kind of a speed through look or whatever, but it gives you guys an idea of the slate. Went over some players and everything like that. Hit like on this video, get me to 15 likes, and put out a shorter video focused on individual games. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. I am trying to get to 500 subscribers on that YouTube page, so help me out there. I'm at about 440 right now, so I need about 60 left. And sign up for Underdog using the promo code SEEK, SEEK. They're going to match you up to $100 on your first deposit. And hit me up on Twitter at Pumacom. If you do that, I'll hook you up with my my rankings for playoff best ball. That's it, guys. Check out the game script that's already up for the Tampa-Detroit game for full analysis, and I will see you guys for the Kansas City game script.